An Indian boy went hunting on a mountain. He climbed the rocks up to a steep cliff, a wall of rock reaching to the mountain top. When he came out on a high, flat ledge, he wanted to rest. But just then he saw two burning eyes looking right at him. They were the eyes of an eagle, a wild, fierce bird crouching at the back of the ledge up against the cliff. Quickly he drew an arrow from his quiver and pulled back the bowstring to drive the arrow into the eagle's heart. Then he saw that the eagle was hurt. It was a young eagle, and it had fallen from its nest on the cliff and broken its wing and torn its feathers. It couldn't get away. The Indian boy unstrung his bow and put the arrow back in the quiver. Then, with his arms outstretched, he moved slowly toward the wounded bird. He reached out to catch it in his arms and bring it home without killing it. As he came closer, the frightened and angry bird struck at him with its sharp beak and talons. As he clutched it, the bird beat at him with its wings, scratched his face and tore his hands. But the boy wouldn't let go. At last, when he had the eagle firmly in his arms, the Indian boy started down the trail. He walked into his father's lodge carrying the eagle. He surprised his mother. The Indian boy made a nest of ferns. Then he tied one end of a long thong to one of the eagle's legs, and the other end to a stake that he drove into the ground. This way the eagle could move about, but he couldn't get away. Now the boy sat down near the eagle and stroked him and tried to get him to drink and eat. The boy's mother was pleased. She had a warm heart for all living things. She had always known that her son would be a brave hunter, but now she knew that he could be gentle where there was pain. He could feel for the feelings of others. He would be a kind man. When the boy's father came to the lodge at sunset and saw the eagle, he seized the bird in his hands and drew his knife to kill it. The boy cried out, "Father, do not harm him. Let me keep him alive." "You cannot keep him. He is a fierce and wild bird. He kills. He will steal from our stores of food," said his father. "He is the first living thing I have caught. He is injured and weak. I will heal him and make him strong," said the boy. "I wish to keep him." "You are a hunter of eagles," said the father. "You cannot be soft with the heart of a squaw. But you may keep him until he is strong enough to fly away. He belongs in the high mountains." As the days of summer passed, the Indian boy fed the eagle. The eagle's wing healed and grew strong. One day when the thong was untied, the eagle flew around the lodge. Each day he flew further and further, but always he came back to the boy. When the leaves in the forest began to turn yellow and brown and red, the summer was at an end. The time had come to let the eagle go. Because he feared that some of the young braves might shoot the eagle down with their arrows, he carried the eagle far beyond the lodges, far beyond the Indian village. There he took the thong off, took it off the eagle's leg, and slowly the eagle rose up into the air. He flew a great circle around the boy, then higher and higher he soared and disappeared behind the mountains. Alone and lonely, the Indian boy walked back to his father's lodge. The winter was bitter cold, with winds carrying snow and ice from the north. The winter was long. The food the Indians had gathered, the dried meat, the acorns, plant roots, and corn, was all being used up, and there wasn't much left to eat. Then at last came the welcome breezes, warmed by the sun. Birds which had gone south began to return. There was tender new grass on the fields and buds on the trees. The Indians began to work to shape their spears and arrows and strengthen their canoes for fishing. For soon the time would come when they could go out on the river to fish in the deep, dark pools and the rushing waters. When the day for fishing came, the Indian boy paddled his canoe out on the river above the great falls. Here the fish were many. Soon he was so excited by the fish all around him, and so busy spearing fish and tossing them into the canoe, that he forgot to eat. He forgot time. He forgot where he was. He didn't even notice that the canoe was drifting downstream slowly, and then more and more swiftly. If his canoe became caught in the strong current, it would be swept into the rapids, and then in the grip of the swift waters, it would be swept over the falls and dashed to pieces on the rocks below. But the Indian boy was fishing and working hard and not noticing anything but what he was doing. All of a sudden, he felt the canoe shiver. He heard the roar of the plunging waters and was wet by the spray all around him. He dropped his spear and seized his paddle. With all the strength of his arms and back, he pressed his paddle against the current to turn the canoe toward the nearest river bank, to turn the canoe back away from the danger. And just as he'd begun to hold the canoe against the power of the water, the paddle snapped with a crack. He tried to fight the current with the broken blade and then with his hands, but the rushing current was like a huge giant pulling the canoe toward the falls. Nothing could stop it. Faster and faster the canoe glided toward the edge. The young Indian knew that he was about to be dashed over the falls. He knew he would die. Bravely, he knelt in the canoe and raised his hands and sang his death chant to the Great Spirit. As he knelt, covered with spray and deafened by the roaring waters, he felt a shadow pass over him. He looked up. It was the eagle, its huge wings outspread, gliding down to him, reaching down its legs as if to say, take hold, before it's too late, take hold. Swiftly rising, he stood up in the canoe and reached as high as he could and grasped the eagle's legs just in time. For in that moment, the canoe fell away under him, down into the swirling waters and the rocks below. But the Indian boy felt himself lifted upward into the air and out away from the falls. He felt the power of the eagle's wings carrying him, gliding lower and lower, closer and closer to the earth below, until gently the eagle put the boy down on the soft, green, grassy bank of the river. The young Indian rose up on his feet to thank the eagle, but already the eagle was rising and flying, soaring swiftly, growing smaller and smaller, a speck against the sun, and then lost to sight. As he stood there with warm thanks in his heart, a feather floated down from the high sky, drifting and falling and turning until the feather rested against his breast. The Indian boy knew it came from his friend, from the wing he had healed, from the bird he had saved. That night at the council fire of his tribe, his father asked that he tell his story. When the young Indian had finished, he held up the eagle's feather. The old chief stood up and said, "You will be a brave and kind chief. Your name will be Eagle Feather." And so it was that the young Indian received his name, and the name Eagle Feather was great among his people.